right, thank you for tuning in. 20 minutes after 11 o'clock. Beautiful Friday. It feels good to be Friday, right?
It does. It really does. Good morning. Beautiful couple. They're so fun looking.
All right, Bill Schneider is on the phone. He has an impressive list of credentials. He's a leading United States political analyst. He's a professor at the Schar School of Policy. Please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that. It's the School of Policy and Government at George Mason University. He's a contributor to the Los Angeles Times, the New Republic, Political, the Washington Post, NBC News, Think, and then he's got a lot of credentials. His book is called Standoff: How America Became Ungovernable. I read the blurb, I guess you say, the thing that introduces you to a book on Amazon, and I'm thinking I'm going to disagree with him some. So I'm okay with debate, but of course I want everybody to know that if I disagree with somebody, it doesn't mean I don't respect them. Obviously, Mr. Schneider has some impressive credentials, greatly respect him, and it's such an honor to be able to say good morning to him. So, good morning, Bill Schneider. Thank you for being on our show.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So some of the things in the blurb I would have issue with, but we don't have such a long period of time. And when I say I have issue, here's my position on this. My mind can be changed. So in some things maybe not, but in a lot of things I can. So I appreciate intelligent debate, and thank you for being on our show.
Thank you for having a mind that can be changed. There are very few left.
I know. I do a radio show, so I know. Let me ask you the book, the title, Ungovernable. In what way are we ungovernable? Let me just say it that way. How are we ungovernable?
Because we have a system of limited and weak government that makes it very easy to block things from happening. We have divisions of power, we have checks and balances, we have a federal system where states can attempt to defy the federal government. California is doing that right now on a lot of different issues, sanctuary cities, auto emissions. It's very easy to keep things from happening in this country. They do happen, of course, and our government does work, but it works best if there's a crisis, if there's an overwhelming sense of public urgency to get something done. Then all the blockages fall away and government can act pretty efficiently. That happened after the fiscal crisis. It happened after 9/11. It happens repeatedly.
Okay. So there are some things I agree, and some ways I could probably debate you, but just for the sake of time, I'm going to agree. Just for the sake of time, we could probably get into a longer discussion on that very thing you just said. But with giving the benefit of the doubt that that's correct, that's all correct, do you think one of the solutions to the problem would be term limits? I feel like people are in office way too long.
Term limits is a very odd solution, and they're very popular. They almost always pass. The problem is we already have a system that allows us to fire people who are not doing their jobs. Term limits says if a person is doing a great job, we can't keep him on or her. The idea is that they have to go. A lot of people wanted Ronald Reagan to stay in office after 2 terms, so they elected his vice president, George H.W. Bush. But term limits, it's an interesting solution because while it's very popular, it really limits the people's ability to control government.
Okay, so my little suggestion, there was an example of having my mind changed. So tell me what your suggestion would be. What could we do to make ourselves less ungovernable?
Well, I'm not going to say we do need a crisis to make ourselves governable, but that's not a terrible thing because it means that when something truly becomes urgent, then government will work. Right now, there are 2 problems out there that everyone agrees are problems, but they don't have urgency. One of them is climate change. Most Americans agree that climate change is happening. They're not sure if people cause it, and they're not sure that there's much we can do about it. So it's very hard to get action. Another problem is the national debt. That's more of a problem for conservatives. But they say we are all doomed if the national debt keeps piling up, and it does under both Democratic and Republican presidents, but it hasn't reached the level of a crisis. And until it does, there's not much we can do about it. Right, when that happens, things will change.
Okay, the debate that I can hear that I want to address is the global warming one. I think... and not whether there is or not. That's not my debate. My debate is whether we are doing something about it. It seems to me everybody is doing something about it. Everybody's trying their hardest to be more to be better stewards. They're and not everybody. Okay, that's really the wrong thing to say. But a lot of people that I know are trying to get more fuel efficient cars. Are trying to use electric cars if they can afford them. Are recycling. They're trying to do all those things. They're trying to get the less voltage or whatever they are, the light bulbs that use less electricity. I do see a lot of people doing those things.
And that's good because it does slow global warming, but you need a lot bigger effort and a lot more changes to really do something to reverse this pattern. And a lot of people doubt, I've heard people say, you mean if I change my light bulbs, then we won't have terrible storms like Hurricane Katrina? That doesn't make any sense to me. They're a little bit confused as to the effects of what they're doing.
Right.
And it's going to have to be a massive effort. Economists will tell you there's a single thing that can be done to halt global warming that would be very effective. You try to get this passed. How about if we have a carbon tax and increase the price of gasoline 50 cents a gallon? So people drive less, so there's less traffic on the highways, there's fewer accidents. That would be a solution, but try to sell that to the American people.
Well, because the reason that doesn't sell is because we have a hard time understanding how the government getting a piece of my money is going to solve anything other than giving them a piece of my money. Because ultimately, the people with the money are going to be the ones buying the fuel that you don't want us to buy.
Yes, but it does mean there'll be less consumption of gasoline, less driving, which solve a lot of problems. But, of course, people will never tolerate it.
Well, it'll be the rich. The rich will be the ones driving and flying everywhere.
Yes, they will. And they have more money to begin with, and they drive and fly more than anything they want right now.
See, the problem I have with this is personal in a way, because we had Bono from U2, and I love Bono, and I love U2, but I didn't agree with what he said to me. He said to me, I need to start driving less. And I need to start turning off my lights in my house. He was talking to a man who lives in a mobile home with one light, and I drive 4 miles to work in a 30 mile per hour, 30 mile per gallon. What is it? 30 miles per gallon car.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I was doing my part.
Yeah.
Yeah. And meanwhile, he's standing on a stage with a million light bulbs and flying everywhere in a jet plane. So I had a hard time with him on that one.
That's a hard time.
All right. The book is called Standoff. It's on Amazon. I did find it on Amazon. One of the other things you talk about is specifically about immigration. Tell me what your thoughts are, and do we have any new laws since Trump took office, or aren't the laws the same as they've always been?
Yeah, they are. We have new procedures for dealing with people who come across the border illegally, and some of those procedures have become very unpopular, like separating children from their parents.
Right.
But there are no dramatic new laws. Immigration reform is on the agenda. It's on there all the time. Congress can't really pass it, even though Republicans have a majority now in both the House and Senate, and may have it after the election. They're finding it very hard to hold together to pass new immigration reforms. They couldn't do it under George W. Bush. They couldn't do it under Barack Obama, and it's very hard to do under Donald Trump.
So what is the solution to that? I mean, don't we need immigration laws?
We need immigrants in this country because the birth rate is very low, and we need workers, both high-skilled workers who are very often immigrants, who are trained overseas, and lower-skilled workers to do jobs that many Americans don't want to do. It used to be the case that people from Latin America could cross the border, come to the United States, work in construction, work in agriculture, save their money. They lived in barracks. They go home. And then the next growing season or construction season, they would come back. They would go back and forth. Can't do that anymore.
Okay, everything you said I agree with, but you didn't answer the question. The question was, don't we need immigration laws?
Yes. And immigration reform is on the agenda, but there is a vast disagreement, not just by party, but even among Republicans, over how to fix the immigration system.
Okay, but if we have an immigration law that is changed, and that immigration law still has a way to get in and a way that you can't get in. If we still have laws that say, I'm sorry, you don't cut the grade, which is what happened to my mother, by the way, in 1928. So she could not come into this country for a year because she had rubella or some kind of a disease. Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's right.
So if we have laws that say you can't come in, and people still decide to come in and break that law, shouldn't that law be enforced?
It should be enforced, and that's what Donald Trump and his administration has been trying to do. But the consequences of enforcement, particularly if it separates parents and children, are intolerable to many Americans. They just don't think that that's the right way to go about doing it. What they're trying to do now is deport people as soon as they cross the border. They're breaking the law, and they should be sent back immediately, and President Trump wants to do it without involving courts and judges and immigration law. They cross the border, they're caught, they're sent back home right away. That would be one way of dealing with the problem, and a lot of people think it'd be better because it takes months now for people to get a hearing before an immigration judge.
Is that done differently than under Obama? Was he not doing the same thing?
Yes. He was doing the same thing. There's a bigger scale now. Actually, the number of immigrants coming into the country has slowed a good deal, and the number of illegal immigrants, it has slowed a good deal. But it's been very high for some time. And every time the American economy heats up, as it's doing right now, immigrants come here to get jobs.
Would we?
A lot of them are escaping violence in their own country.
Would we be treating immigrants differently if Hillary had been elected? And if so, what would we be doing differently?
I don't think that we have very different laws. If Hillary Clinton were president, I think everything would pretty much be the same, except the activities of ICE and the Border Patrol would probably be less harsh, because she probably wouldn't have issued an order to round up and get rid of illegal immigrants without due process.
Okay.
I think that would have been very difficult for her.
So if we have a law, but we tell law enforcement to not enforce it, what's the point of the law?
Well, we don't tell law enforcement not to enforce it. It's just we have a very inefficient way of enforcing it. Immigrants come here illegally. They are, by definition, lawbreakers. But we believe in due process, even for people who aren't Americans. And it can take a great deal of time to go through the system. People are let into the country. Then we call it catch and release. They're not held for months until they can get a hearing. They're told they have to report back to court on a certain day. And a lot of them simply don't show up, which is the reason why we have so many illegal immigrants all over the country now.
Part of it I'm having a hard time understanding. Not that you're making it hard. You're doing a great job. What I'm getting at is, I guess I'm drawing from my mom. When 1928, she had rubella. Her brother, my uncle, and her mother all stayed in Europe, in Germany, while my grandfather came here. Had they all come together, my mom would have been put in quarantine. So she would have been sent back eventually, but she would have been put into like a ward at a hospital and then sent back. So she would have been separated from her parents. And then they would have been reconnected. I don't know how long it would have taken. But that's why they didn't come here. That's why my grandfather came first. And so that the message of here are the rules before you decide to come to America, here are the rules, you have to abide by them. I don't know why that message isn't getting to the people who are trying to come here before they get here and get their ducks in a row and then come in.
Well, the problem for a lot of people trying to come here is they're desperate. There's violence in their country. They're afraid that they'll be killed. There's drug violence. There's crime. There are people overrunning the country with weapons. They are in fear for their lives. And when they come to this country, in many cases, it's a move of desperation from disordered countries in Latin America. So they feel as if they have no choice.
The beautiful thing of freedom of speech, I hope we never get rid of that, is this conversation right here. If we can have this dialogue everywhere, then I think it makes this country a better place. I do want to hear from people who disagree with me. I hope you're okay with the fact that I'm disagreeing with some of the things you're saying. I think it makes us a better nation. It's supposed to, and I think it does. Bill, it's been an honor to have you on our show. Thank you so much. The book is called Standoff. I found it on Amazon. Do you want to direct us to a website? Well, Amazon.com would be the place to get the book. Okay. Also, BarnesandNoble.com. All right. Probably Simon & Schuster. They're the publisher. They probably have it available on their website. Okay. I don't have one. Yeah, that's what I was asking. I didn't know if you had one or not. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for being on the show with us today. My pleasure. Thank you. You're welcome. We'll be right back.
You're thinking about selling your home, but where do you start? Easy. Call Angie at 352-361-8359. Angie works with you to get your home sold. Angie is more than just an agent with Roberts Real Estate. She's a pro with heart. Call her at 352-361-8359, and you will know you have the right person.
I'm Angie